working? Hello. Hi, Bonnie. Trying to figure this out, make sure I can see. Hi, Sunshine. Um, oh, great. Now I already start yawning. I feel like it's a Facebook Live. Like, I have to wait. You're like, I'll just give it a minute. Um, there she is.
Hey.
Hi.
Our last session ran over. You were good to go.
Oh, yeah, come on screen with me, Bonnie. Uh, so, all right. Should I start now?
Yeah, go for it.
All right.
Give us a formal intro.
Formal. Good morning. Okay. So here we go. So good morning. I am Julie Jabiro, and we're talking all about hemp this time. And spoiler alert, we're going to talk about my other favorite thing, which is called CBDA. I know I haven't even mentioned this to you guys, I don't think, but it is a game changer when it comes to pain. And I am no stranger to pain, but few stats that I found that seems pretty important. Um, 50 million adults in the US are chronic pain. So that's 1 in 5 people have chronic pain. And, 54 million adults have arthritis, which I think is actually even higher than that. I'm not sure what year this was from. And also over 540 million have back pain in general, which is the leading cause of disability. That's a little bit nuts to me. So we'll start with my quick story. It's not exactly quick, but it's a long story starting back when I was about 10. So I literally have not had a day in my life that I can remember not being in pain. And it started with, is my thing disconnecting? It just said it was. It's been storming here like crazy all morning. I have no idea what's going on. So starting about 10, I would say, and I danced my whole life, but I had this debilitating back pain, and there was never a good reason for it. I've gone to a million different doctors, and it's always like, something, is like, there's a little bit of inflammation, there's a little bit of this, but nothing ever that should have caused the amount of pain I was in forever. And aside from my whole other issue of being misdiagnosed with narcolepsy for over 20 years, but from being a teenager to adulthood, I've had every possible treatment you can think of, including, years and years of chiropractors. I don't know how many rounds of physical therapy, acupuncture. I've had 3 surgeries, nerve ablations, like you name it, I've had it, and nothing ever touched it. And also, I don't know if anybody's ever been part of a pain clinic, but it's not fun. They treat you kind of like a drug addict. You take bug shots basically, and you have to like sign your life away. And then when you come in, it's like, here to come. You're like, oh my gosh, like I'm not a drug addict. I just literally can't function because I'm in so much pain. So that was a nightmare. So I'm sorry if anybody has had to be part of that, because it's no fun. Not to mention it can destroy your life. But so long story short, oh yeah, it's miserable. And at the height of this, I was taking 9 different pain pills a day. I don't know how the heck my liver didn't fail. I have no idea. But that is no way to live. Countless pain pills. It's ridiculous. So fast forward, if you're a parent, you kind of know that you do anything for kids, and like then you get kind of back burner, and like your kids can have the best of everything, but when it comes to you, you're like, okay, I can deal with that. So this actually was almost accidental, because I had gotten to the point where I just thought that was it. Like that was just going to be life, and I had just going to be miserable, and come to terms with that. And I wasn't doing good, but I quit going to doctors. I quit looking for help because nobody was going to fix it. But not luckily, but hi Kate, my son, when he was about 6 or 7, was diagnosed with Tourette's, and I was not about to have him go down this medical mystery road and just be a guinea pig for all this stuff. So eventually, that's a whole nother story. That's how I got into the whole hemp industry. So fast forward with his stuff, and we kind of fired his doctors, and I had heard CBD is this miracle cure-all something. I didn't really know anything about it, so I went down this rabbit hole for about 2 years, researching the heck out of it, trying all different brands, spending a small fortune, and then having a picky kid that wouldn't touch it because it was disgusting. So I tried it myself too. Like this was kind of a 2 for 1, because I was trying to help him with his stuff, and then help my pain, because I heard it was good for pain. It's not that simple, and there's a lot of different stuff out there. So after spending my small fortune and trying and being frustrated, I was pretty much there where it was like, yep, I knew it. It was just all hype and it's too good to be true, blah, blah, blah. And I almost wrote off the whole idea until I found this company that was pretty brand new in 2019. And I was like, okay, last one. Last one I'm going to try because I loved her story. It was a mom who started it. They literally created it, for her postpartum and stuff. And I was like, fine, this is the last one I'm going to try. And so glad I did because it literally changed my life. So here's another fun fact for you because when I started taking it, you're supposed to start low and slow. And I'm the type of person, I'm like, I'm in so much more pain, so I'm going to take more. If anybody's like that, where you're like, start with a little bit, and you're like, I'm not normal. I'm in so much more pain than the average person, so I'm going to take more, and don't do that. Backfired. Backfired, and I had to start over. So just word of caution, don't do that. But once I started, again, slow, 23 days, and I woke up a different person. That's when I knew. I was like, holy cow, this is something everybody needs to know about. So I'll never forget, I woke up, and if anybody has chronic back pain, this is a big deal. So I woke up and I was like, oh, like I didn't feel like I had shattered glass for a spine. And I remember my son that I started this for was, he came by my room and he's like, you okay? You having a bad dream? I'm like, no. He's like, why are you crying? And I'm like, because I don't hurt. Like I got up, I could touch my toes. It was, for most people, you're just like, okay. But if you know chronic pain, it was amazing. So from that point on, I knew that was my mission now. I had to educate people on this because when I first started looking into this, I was beyond overwhelmed and frustrated and couldn't get straight answers and pulling my hair out. So it's not the easiest topic, but it's so important that I now tell other people about this because I uncomplicate it and tell you all about it. So that was my life-changing story. So since then, I've been able to help hundreds of people have similar situations. So moving on. So what the heck is CBD and what isn't it is the most important, I think, because there's a lot of misinformation, I guess they call that. They're just myths in general. So if you'll hear the word cannabis, like even like when, like in the studies and the news and everybody, and they just say cannabis, which technically is like grapes. When when you hear medical cannabis, that doesn't always mean they're referring to THC stuff like that. So think about it like cannabis is like grapes or apples, and then there is two different plants. There's the marijuana plant, which is where the THC comes from, and then hemp, which they're cousins. So it's like red grapes and green grapes. You have two different ones. So they're totally different plants, but they're cousins. Hemp derived CBD is federally legal. So you have the hemp plants, which has been around for thousands and thousands of years. And it's been, cultivated for everything. Like it's actually the most versatile plant. And that's a side note, but literally more hemp could probably just save the world. If you're not familiar with hemp in general, is like before, I don't remember the year, but the US had to, like certain places had to be zoned to grow hemp, like back in the day before they were all states. And certain areas had to be growing hemp for, the ropes, the textiles, the paper, like the, not the Declaration of Independence was wrote on hemp paper. So, and another fun fact is you could make 4 times the amount of paper from hemp than from one tree. It's amazing. And the Model T was all hemp. It was run on hemp ethanol, made of a hemp acrylic, hemp upholstery. Like, it's amazing. So, sorry, I was rambling about that, but it could quite literally change the world. So this comes from the hemp plant, which is the main difference was the hemp is high in CBD, low in THC. THC is tetrahydro, just call it THC, is what causes the high that people talk about and, euphoria, mind altering, that kind of thing. But it has low amounts of that. And then the marijuana plant obviously has more THC, low in CBD. So technically, I guess you could get CBD from the marijuana plant, but people don't really do that. It's not very effective that way because there's so little and it's not really worth it. So only if you're in the US here, hemp derived CBD is federally legal. So be careful. And then I guess I don't have to go into the whole history about that. So legality stuff, and I'll touch base on that at the end of what you're looking for, what is safe, and that kind of thing. But the next thing, why it works, how it works, is called our endocannabinoid system. This is honestly the coolest thing, and this is what really made me want to talk about this more with people, is because I think only 6% of medical schools teach this. But back in the 90s, if you remember, it was like, this is your brain on drugs. I can't remember the whole rest of the message, but those were the commercials back then. Like, this is your brain on drugs. That whole study ended up finding or discovering this whole endocannabinoid system that we have. I don't know how they didn't know about this before, but it's a pretty big deal because it regulates every single thing in the body. It's like the project manager of the entire body, and it's got a checklist of things it has to do. And there is nothing that happens in the body that isn't somehow run through, passed by, touched on something through the endocannabinoid system. Sorry, I have notes because I will get sidetracked, but think of it as like the complex messaging system. So what they taught, that you have your circulatory, respiratory, all your systems, and now they have discovered that the endocannabinoid is the one up here. So this is why a lot of things don't work when you're going, to pain clinics and doctors and stuff, and they're just putting Band-Aid solutions on things, and you're just pulling things out of balance. Like, that's my favorite description, is think of like, like the baby mobiles, where they have the little things hanging all over. So when you have something out of whack and they give you a medicine to put on this one, and it's going to pull from here, and this is going to pull from here, you're going to have Band-Aids until something snaps, and then it's all out of whack. You're never going to be perfectly balanced until up here, like if you put that straight, then you'll be balanced. And that's exactly what the endocannabinoid system does. Call it ECS for short. So if I do say that, I don't want to confuse anybody. It's responsible for everything. And we have the two main receptors that it works on are called CB1 and 2, and they are all over the body. So we actually make what's called endogenous cannabinoids. So all mammals have the system. So I don't want to say too much sciencey stuff and confuse, but we make these two main cannabinoids ourselves. And the first one's called anandamide, and it's the feel good, like the bliss molecule, which actually, if you've ever heard of like the runner's high, I'm not a runner, so I've never had it, but they always say it's like endorphins, and it's go outside, get some fresh air, and do this. They always call it endorphins. It's actually not. It is anandamide, and it is actually a cannabinoid that we make ourselves, and it's the serotonin. It regulates all that stuff. So anandamide is the biggest one that we make ourselves, and the other one is called 2-AG, and that one's found mostly in the immune system. So anandamide is like the big nervous system one. So you're going to find that all over, which obviously if you think about serotonin, that's in the brain, which also in the brain where these receptors are is going to be the serotonin and melatonin. Those are the two regulator ones that it's going to help up there. So that's why so many people will hear, like, oh, well, there's got to be a CBD for pain, and then there's got to be one for sleep, and then one for stress. Like, most of that's marketing, because just CBD in general helps with all those things. It just depends on what is off in your body. So another thing about that is if you think it's pain. So this endocannabinoid system is the smartest part about you, and it knows what needs to go where. So it's got a checklist that it's working on, and it could be regulating stress and this and that before pain. So you think pain is the most important thing, but it's like, no, we're going to regulate this and this first, and that will regulate itself. And so sometimes people will think, oh, it's not working for me, but it is. It's just your body's smarter it knows exactly what it needs more than we do. So, um, sorry. So what I'm saying with this is these are the two main endogenous cannabinoids that we make. I don't want to get too technical and just, most important thing is we have these two that we make ourselves, and we can take other specific cannabinoids to mimic them. So another, everything affects us. Obviously, like we were just talking about, like your emotional health and your toxin overload and your diet and your everything. And cannabinoids are fat soluble. So if you're not having enough of the, I almost said DHA, omegas. Omegas are very big to have if you have enough healthy fats in your diet to make the cannabinoids actually work for you, and then make them more yourself too. So some people need a little bit, some people need a lot. It just depends on what your body's doing. Um, and then also, it's very easy to overdo it. So, like when people, sorry, this is a side note, but when people get high, if they say they take THC, like people think that you need THC to make anything effective for some reason. That's actually you're way on your high end of what your body needs. So, obviously, I think everybody's familiar with THC. That one causes the euphoria, the mind altering stuff, psychoactive. But that's your body telling you, like, there's like a dosing, what is that, like a bell curve, I think it's called. So this to this, you want to always stay on the lower side so that you don't overload the receptors. Because, like I said, like my example, when I very first started, I was like, I'm in more pain. I'm going to take more than I need. That's not, you don't do that, because that way, as soon as I did that, I overloaded my system and it did nothing. It actually just kind of reversed it, and I had to go backwards and start over. So when you take too much and you get high, that is the overdoing of it, and you've overloaded your system. So, um, sorry, looking at this note. So the endocannabinoid system, quite literally the most important thing. And I think now, hopefully, it's at least up to 10%, but last I checked, it was only at 6% of med schools teaching this, which is crazy to me, because if you think about it, as many doctor's appointments as people have gone to and got no answers, this whole system is responsible for pretty much everything. I mean, there's always other components, obviously, with your diet and your sleep and your stress, but the main things that CBD regulates is stress, sleep. Wait, what did I just say? Stress, sleep, and pain. Sorry. Sorry. Pain, sleep, and stress are the main things it regulates. And it's always going to deal with those three things, and then everything else balance out. So if you are, toxins are one of the biggest things, because it's going to, if you keep bombarding it with things, its main job is to homeostasis, which is balance. So if you just keep giving those situations into your body, it's never going to balance out, and it's going to just keep running and running and running until you're totally burnt out, which is where a lot of people are. So think about the endocannabinoid system. It's more like you have, like your workers, and you have a whole symphony. We'll use a symphony. So you have all the different instruments playing, and you introduce CBD. It's not like another musician, it is the conductor. So if you have all these people playing instruments and nobody's making sense and things are all over the place and doesn't sound right, that's where CBD comes in, and it just conducts everything, and everybody's back where they need to be. So a lot of times people, because especially if you're used to THC, you're expecting something. So you feel that normally. So with CBD, you don't feel things, and if you do right away, like if you take a dose of something and you're like, oh, I feel so much better, you shouldn't. It's the absence of it. That's the biggest thing, is because it's not terrible that you felt it, or it's a good thing that you did, but you always want to be on the lower side so that you don't overdo it and you don't build up a tolerance so fast like that. But ideally, CBD is not something you feel. It's just the absence of stress, irritability, all the things that people don't like. It just is a balance, and it's just gone. And that's the thing. That's why a lot of people don't even realize that it's working for them. Like I didn't with my son. I was like, I remember my mom asking me, she's like, so how's it going? This was during COVID, when we had to like homeschool, Zoom school, whatever it was. And I'm like, oh no. She's like, how's he doing? And I was like, I don't know. I don't think it's working. And then I was like, wait a minute. I look over, he's just doing his class. He just got on his Zoom to do whatever it was. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly what happened. Like it's just normal life, like how it should be. So very, very cool how that works. So more like a conductor. Um, but there's important biological things that CBD does in the body. I mean, this is just one of over 100 cannabinoids, and that's constantly researching and coming up and understanding new things about it and different ones. But obviously, CBD and THC, I think, are the most important, the most popular ones. Um, and THC is not a bad thing. I know I see a lot of people are like, get the THC free one, which I don't agree with. I think I'll touch on those with the different kinds in a few minutes, but it's necessary usually for most people, especially when it comes to pain. But biologically, these are antioxidants and it protects cells from free radical damage, which is pretty cool, and lowers the inflammation. So, chronic pain, obviously, that's a big one. And it improves circulation. So, if that's another issue that you're having blood flow issues to wherever that area is that hurts, that's definitely going to help. And another huge thing is a lot of it's from mood. So this serotonin receptors, huge, huge part of that. Uh, but yes, it binds to those receptors and makes it produce more or less depending, what the situation is. So if you've ever noticed, like if you're emotional, like they say emotional wreck, I don't want to like say the wrong words, but things tend to hurt more. You feel things more, and it's not fun. Um, that's why. So once you balance those out, things are not as big of a deal. I don't know how to word that nicely, but regulating emotions, that's a huge, huge part of it. Then I don't know, say if I want to talk about CBDA first. Also, so CBD, let me talk about the two different kinds first of all. There is a full spectrum and a broad spectrum. So when you, like I was just saying, there's don't get the THC in it. I don't agree with that. So a full spectrum is all the components of the plant. There's a bunch of different, depending on what we do. Like with where the company I'm with, we only grow the female plant, which is mostly flowers. Um, most companies that do this, they have industrial hemp. So they grow really tall, they chop them, and they use the entire plant. And it's more fillers, but you can use it. It's just not as effective. All the good stuff comes from the flower itself, which is full of all the cannabinoids and healing stuff that you need because there's not so much of that in the rest of the plant. So we grow huge flowers. And what they're doing with that, they extract the CBD, which at first, like the whole plant or the whole flower itself, that is CBDA, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but that is the raw acidic form. So if you ever see like THCA, CBGA, all the A's at the end mean acidic. That's like the raw part. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And that's the thing, like a lot of companies, like if you read the ingredients on a bottle, they'll say aerial parts, which is the stalk, the stems, the leaves, all the stuff. They just grind that up and put it into the mix, and it's usually darker in color. Um, and that I found is mostly why we didn't like the taste of any of them. So with ours, like I said, we only extract from the flower, which is normally really expensive. That's why people don't do it. But when we own the farms, we do everything. We have no middleman. It's just we own the farms. We do everything USDA certified, and there's no middleman. It's all in North Carolina. Everything's done by the same people, so we can do that. But that's the difference. If you've ever seen CBD, this is what it looks like from the flower. It's clear and it doesn't taste terrible. So that was a huge deal when you have kids, by the way. What was I just saying? What was I just saying? Oh, look at that. Yes. I'm sorry. So full spectrum is when they extract it, it's got all the other cannabinoids. So it's got some CBDA, or no, because once it's cooked, once it's heated, it turns into CBD. So it's generally not in there. Um, but it's got all different cannabinoids, whatever strain they've grown, whatever. It's got other cannabinoids in there, including trace amounts of THC. That's the important part. Um, in the States here is 3% THC is dry weight is legal, federally legal. And again, that is never, ever, ever, ever enough to get you high. You will not feel any euphoric effects or anything like that from the federally legal 3%. But just be careful because obviously some states, just the marijuana side of it is legal. So you got to make sure on labels, that it's just the standard 3. But most people, that's what it is. And what that does is got all the other terpenes and, like I said, the cannabinoids, flavonoids. It's got all the good stuff in it. And what it does is entourage effect. So it's going to work best because obviously when you have every part of something that you're supposed to have, it's going to work better. It's like I can't think of a great example. I was going to say Pepsi and then like Diet Pepsi or something, but that's a terrible idea. But then obviously there's people who can't have any type of THC if they have drug testing or anything like that. Like I said, it's not going to physically do anything differently like that, but it can show up in a drug test. So obviously we don't want to deal with that. So there's a broad spectrum, which is all the same things, still got the other cannabinoids and terpenes and stuff like that, but it's just had the THC removed completely for that kind of situation. So you don't have to worry about that. Most companies, that's the deal. But that's a huge deal, is to make sure it's reputable, have testing, so it's not going to show up. Because I've heard lots of stories of people who thought they were taking something that had no THC, and then they failed the drug test for dream jobs, and that's why it's very important. So knowing what you're taking. So those are the two main. Some people also have what's called a distillate, or an isolate, is just the CBD extracted, which I honestly don't think it's helpful. I don't know that anybody ever really, really needs that, but sometimes it's available. We used to have it, but we don't anymore because it's just not something most people need. So full or broad is usually enough for every situation that you could need. So, like I said, it's a personal preference, what you have going on. And then my favorite thing is the CBDA. So this was very, very exciting because this was during COVID, because all the shipping issues that people had for coming from everywhere and being stuck and out of stock, all that nightmare. Because we own everything and we do everything ourselves, we have our own labs and everything like that. We didn't have that problem, but we also have our own scientists and all the things. And when research was coming out about the healing properties, again, even in this study, it said cannabis, but in the actual fine print behind it, they were talking about CBDA, which most people wouldn't even know that unless they read the whole study, which is like Greek to most. So it was actually CBDA that they were talking about. So we were able to extract it from our own flowers and do the whole process and come up with this bottle in a few months and able to sell it and help people, which I don't even know if they could hear on here, but yes, can't say cure or help, prevent, whatever. But during that time of COVID, huge results. So we had that come up. But there's tons of science coming out still, but for pain relief, holy cow, CBDA is a game changer because it works completely different than CBD. If you think about like spaghetti, okay, so the noodles, that's your CBD. That's going to be everything. That covers every condition, every deficiency, that kind of thing. That's your noodles, that's your CBD. Every day, everybody can benefit from that, whether you think you have pain or sleep or any type of issue. It can even be preventative. But this comes from, I say the most helpful things from CBDA is like neuropathy, any type of nerve pain, headache stuff, and like nausea for sure, but like chemo related side effects, I guess, is what those are huge for. Um, but the difference with this, because it binds with the COX-2 receptors, is it can enhance how CBD works for you tenfold. So if you're using a full spectrum or something and you're like, okay, it's working, but it's like, I'm not 100%, or I like, there could be more to it. Adding CBDA, skyrocket that. But you can also take it alone because it works on different receptors and it's not like using all the cannabinoids together. That's ideal. So I always recommend a full spectrum, unless there's a good reason not to. Would broad spectrum work too? Yes, but obviously a full spectrum is usually going to work better. So this is the same, but you don't have to, like I said with the noodles, CBDA is like a sauce on spaghetti. So those two together are unreal how they can just change things. And I've had it massive results with people with diabetic nerve pain. That was a huge one. And during pregnancy, there's been a lot of people that, that we work with that have taken it during the whole pregnancy or car sickness, anything like that. And it's just something I actually just gave both my bottles away to my niece who had surgery. So I don't even have it to show you, but it's incredible. But there's one little caveat here. So it is the raw form. So it's kind of earthy tasting. It's also got this, it's an enzyme. I don't want to get too much into this, but it's got a huge anti-inflammatory response. It's a terpene, BC5, I believe it's called. I don't know. It doesn't even matter, but it's found in cinnamon, like black pepper, any overly spicy tasting stuff, that terpene is in there. So if you're not familiar, I think, Bonnie, you should probably know about terpenes, but it's what gives plants and vegetable, anything really, their smell and taste. But they also work in the body by binding to certain receptors and helping do whatever specific one it does. So this one specifically helps with nausea and the nerves and all the things I was just mentioning. So being that it's earthy, it was tough. Like when it first came out, I said how we had that show up quickly. It tasted earthy, not gonna lie. People say it tastes like weed and smells like it, but I mean, it's a little bit different than that. But luckily, if you like cinnamon, we came out with a cinnamon version, and that one is awesome. So luckily, we don't have to, and that's, it doesn't taste, I don't taste the earthiness anymore in the cinnamon one. So just something to know. But yes, that has been a huge game changer for, I know, like cancer is a huge one. Also, I don't want to get too much into that, but that is a game changer. So if there's pain, headaches, sleep, stress, it's actually very good for stress. I love taking this stuff, and I sometimes will just take that by itself instead of the whole shebang. But definitely something to look into if you have any type of nerve pain. Like I know a lot of people have been prescribed GABA or Neurontin. Isn't it the same? I think it's Neurontin and gabapentin is the same thing, right? Just the generic. I was given that before, and I was like, this stuff, that's all you need. So, I don't know. Should I do questions yet, or should I go over? All right, well, save your questions. I'm just going to tell you real quick what to look for in what you need, to be safe, because there is so much garbage out there. Just FYI, if you see it on Amazon, don't buy it, because legally they aren't even allowed to sell any CBD hemp related stuff. So if you see it on there, it's not true. But in general, when it comes to buying a safe, effective product, make sure you know where the heck it's coming from, because anybody can claim it's organically grown, which technically means absolutely nothing, because it could be organic according to like 3 days ago, but that doesn't mean anything, because obviously the soil goes down far enough, and last year or a month ago it could have been filled with God knows what. Organically grown means nothing. So after trying as much as I've tried and knowing what I've known for the last 5, 6 years, I wouldn't touch anything that's not USDA certified, because that right there proves that the soil's been safe and clean of all of the junk for 10 years before it's allowed to even be certified. Also means that it's free of any chemicals and pesticides and all stuff. And then obviously what part of the plant it's extracted from. Ideally, the flower is great, but it's you're going to get what you pay for usually. But the biggest problem is that it's not regulated, and literally anybody can bottle something up and call it CBD, which is terrifying. Like, you could decide that you're going to put some olive oil and coffee grounds in there and call it CBD, put a label on it, and you could do that. So I think it's the people who just want to make a buck and jump on this bandwagon of CBD, and it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what's in it. I know there's been lots of scams like Dr. Phil and some other big doctor names online, saying that they tested this and they certified this, and get this, and it's like lethal amounts of metals and all kinds of junk in it. So always, 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 always make sure there is a certificate of analysis. Hang on, look for this, because there we go. So on any of our products is this, and that's going to tell you every single thing in the product. It will even tell you where the hemp plant was on the farm that this specific product came from. I just had this happen a couple months ago with something that I was looking into, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And I wanted to see the certificate, and they showed it to me, except there was no QR code on the bottom to actually verify it. So even if somebody, because it's been around for a few years, so people are starting to realize, like, oh, I need to have a certificate because people are asking for it now. Not good enough. So I have seen this multiple times on websites, because people will just ask me, like, hey, check this out. Just see if this is decent. And I don't care if I don't make money on it. I don't care. I would much rather have somebody send me the information to go check it out before buying something. And I have found way too many that have these certificates on their website, and it says either there's no name, there's no batch number, there's no any identifying information on it. And then at the bottom, there should always be a QR code to verify those results for that company, that product, this, whatever it is. And I've seen a lot that don't have it. And it's from like 2021. Run away. Don't touch those products. Because, yeah, anybody can throw those up there. And I've seen them copied with the company whited out, with the batch number. So I've talked to quite a few of these labs, like, hey, is this so-and-so? And they're like, I have no idea who that is. So people are getting creative. So be very, very careful with that stuff. Also, extraction method. I think most companies and people are like, the CO2 is like the gold standard. I think most are doing that, but I've still seen some that are using butane and ethanol, and they say it's food grade, but I still wouldn't want it on any of my food, let alone ingesting it. So just something to be aware of. CO2 is ideal, because then they're likely those results aren't telling you the truth after they tested it, because ethanol is going to show up. Those are pretty much the most important things I would say. But yeah, I think that was, I don't know. I'm not going to get into the rest of that, but those are the main things to look for when you want to find something that's going to work. And to make sure, obviously, if you have drug testing, you want to be absolutely certain that it's not showing up anywhere in the THC, because that's to verify. Because I literally just had this story. Actually, it was a few months ago, but it was just a drink too that somebody was using from another big company, and it was just supposed to be some type of drink. I don't even know what it was, but it had no THC. He failed his drug test for his firefighter dream job, and it was because of that. So be very careful. And sorry, one more thing, because this is always a huge topic, is jelly or CBD gummies. Everybody talks about, like these edibles and that kind of thing. So Here's the deal with gummy anythings, vitamins, any type of supplement, CBD especially, those are fat soluble, obviously. And our bodies are made up of mostly water. So this is where it gets different. If you're eating something, it has to go through phase 1 and 2 in the liver, and it's going to get processed, it's going to break down, and say there's 25 milligrams in this one gummy that you're just eating. That's going through digestion. That's going to be dependent on your metabolism, what you've eaten before and after, how fast it does, all the things. And once it goes through digestion, there's going to be little to none left, and whatever is still floating through there is still too big to be absorbed by the water in your body. So you're usually just peeing that out. And the latest science on this was you're getting at best 0 to 7% bioavailability, which means you're only absorbing 0 to 7% of that product. So that's not great. So that's another reason this company is amazing, because they had started working on this before they even launched the company, was to make a nano-sized, if you don't know what nano means, is just basically small. It's been made, the molecules have been made small enough to be absorbed by the water in your body. So what they've done with these is, it's not, we don't call them gummies, they're called nano jellies. So the minute you put them in your mouth, they start working, they start absorbing, and you don't have to digest them because they're water or water soluble, and they start working immediately. So you're getting up to 95% of that product in your body within 20 minutes, which is pretty amazing. So at first, we've only had the broad spectrum, which is the one with no THC, which was an absolute game changer for kids, especially. But what they'd been working on since before the company even launched was a full spectrum version, because that doesn't exist. Actually, nobody has done anything like this with the jellies on the market. Like, it doesn't exist. So now we have a full spectrum, which is unbelievable, especially if it's a pain situation, because I still take these every day. So now when you kind of suck on them at first, is what I would do. And they start working. So before, the problem was it's 10 times stronger than, like taking the tincture, which is the oil. So if that was the case, then the THC in here, you'd be really, really high. So that's what they've been working on for years, is to figure out how to not do that. And they did, and it's amazing. So now there's like a double technology in it, where it starts, as soon as you put it in your mouth, and within 15, 20 minutes, you feel not a high. It's just like a, like, just, okay, I'm okay. Like that kind of a feeling, breath of fresh air. And then that lasts, not that feeling, but like the calm, lasts about 8 hours. And then the second part of the technology, which is like the tincture part, which takes longer, is up to 24 hours. So, or 12, like, so it's a 24-hour thing that it lasts now. And it's amazing. So one time, I usually take it in the morning, and that's that. And then CBDA, if it's pain, but those are very cool. And that does not exist anywhere else. So that's a pretty big deal. And it's USDA certified. So that's huge. I have said a lot of things. I'm sorry. So is there any questions? Because obviously with any of this, we can talk more, because it's a very personalized thing. Obviously, it's not just like one size fits all, because everybody's got a different situation. So everybody's going to need something different dosing. So yes.
How do you handle people with drug testing, like they have to do drug testing for their work and stuff? What does that show up as?
It won't. If it's broad spectrum, it will not show up. Like, that is a guarantee. I mean, we have commercial pilots, law enforcement, government officials. That's the thing, because it's very touchy. People like, yeah, but is it really? Ours especially, like, we're the most transparent company I've ever seen, and it's on there. Like, there's also different sensitivities of drug testing. So if somebody knows exactly like the sensitivity of what they're testing, then we have actual cannabis experts, that know everything about everything. So we can ask, we would never, I personally would never tell somebody like, oh, you're fine, just take that and risk their own livelihood. That's insane. So, but broad spectrum never, ever, ever shows up. Yeah, because there's no trace amounts of THC, which I see all the time. People are like, it's a full spectrum. And then I look at it and it's not, it's literally just CBD in there. So when people claim it's a full spectrum, but it's THC free, that's an oxymoron. That doesn't even exist. A full spectrum has THC. So definitely won't show up on a drug test for a broad spectrum. But here's another thing, because CBN is another cannabinoid that's getting pretty popular for sleep. CBN is like a degraded form of THC, and that will show up, or it can. Doesn't necessarily mean it will, but it's like a form of THC, which I know right now there's a company out there promoting CBN collagen and not telling anybody that that can absolutely happen. So
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
careful with that.
I know when I used to work in a health food store and people would come in all the time for CBD items, and that was always the main concern of why they wouldn't turn to that, because
Oh, of course.
they, police officers, teachers, paramedics, there's so many in the different industries that could not have any form of drug test, or something
Yeah.
drug test. Yeah.
And besides the fact that that's just silly now, because it's federally legal, and like, it just blows my mind. But yeah, as far as, and I don't blame people for being really, really leery about that, because I'm risking your entire livelihood on the premise, like, hopefully they're telling me the truth. And that's why I like educating people about these things, because if you have that type of job and they're like, no way. But I don't care who tells me something in the store. I'm not going to believe them, Like,
Yeah.
I'm not risking my job because this person said it's safe. So
Yeah.
luckily, if people know what to look for and know what it means and can do it themselves and double check and triple check, then it's okay. But yes, that is a big concern for a lot of people. I don't blame it. So
Yeah. I know partly in Tennessee, we several years back we faced a crisis for foster care. We're still in a foster care crisis, but they couldn't find enough people.
Oh.
And they found that it was actually because moms who had taken any form of cannabis would get a drug test at the hospital, and they'd have their kid taken from them immediately. So there was an infant crisis immediately. It was horrible. I don't know if
gosh.
it's an issue, but I think that there's so much dogma, there's so much there that we have to overcome, and learning the benefits of hemp and our endocannabinoid system. I think it's so important. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge.
And that's awful with
I know.
And even people think they need THC. Like, when people are like, oh, I'm in so much pain, like, you have to be high. I was like, it's actually not true. Like, sometimes, like, if it's really, the only time I would say that is like when it's cancer and you can use the RSO, which is a super specific recipe of like the raw material, and it's super gross. It's like tar. But I know a lot of people, like the Rick Simpson oil, that's RSO. Like, it's like almost a branded thing now, which is not. It's just a recipe. But I think that would be the only time that you absolutely had to have it, because it actually reverse cancer cells. So, but most people don't. They just don't understand it, and it's like teaching something all over. Like, I don't even know how you would begin to teach people how to read. Like, at this age, how do you even like go back to the fundamentals of that stuff to like reshape the mind and what it is? It's crazy.
Yeah. People have questions and they're looking for solutions and the right hemp products for them. How do they get a hold of you?
Oh, for sure. Actually, on here, you can push the I don't remember where the button is, but we can absolutely do a little coffee chat and go over it specifically what you need and what would be best. But then there's also the website, which is just juliejabs.com. And there's a questionnaire you can fill out. You know, if you don't want to chit chat, you can do that and see exactly what's needed. And I can give you personalized recommendations and we go from there. Or social media. I'm all over and I'm happy to help you there. So it's pretty easy to get hold of me.
Awesome. Awesome.
All
Well,
right.
fantastic workshop. Thank you so much for
Thank you. Awesome.
bringing this all to our awareness. So
Awesome. All right. Well, you have a great rest of your day. I'm going to listen to the rest of the little workshops.
yep, you too.
Thanks, hon.
Bye.